Close your eyes for a moment and let your mind drift back through the mists of 4,000 years of history. We stand amidst the desolate ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, where fire-baked clay tablets lie silent beneath thick dust, whispering stories of a catastrophic tragedy. These are not songs of glorious battles, but cuneiform marks etched with the agony of a dying city. Can you hear it? It is the lamentation for the legendary city of Ur. Modern scholars have uncovered painful verses describing a strange storm, not one of wind and rain, but a mysterious plague. Bodies piled in heaps at the city gates, the stench of death choking streets once teeming with life, while survivors could do nothing but groan in despair. How did a mighty empire, the very foundation of human civilization, collapse so swiftly? Was it the wrath of the gods, or the rise of an invisible force called disease? Don't turn away just yet. Tonight, we will brush away the dust of time to decode the final secrets of the Sumerians, a people who recorded everything, even their own apocalypse. Lower the lights if you can, not as a rule, not as an instruction, just as a kindness to your own eyes. Let the room soften around you, as if the night is gently turning down the volume on the day. If there's a fan nearby or a steady hum of white noise, let it be your small blanket of sound. And if you've been carrying anything heavy, an unfinished thought, a tired worry, a list that won't stop listing, imagine setting it down beside you for a little while. It doesn't have to disappear. It only has to stop asking for your attention. Tonight, we're going to walk very slowly, not with feet, but with imagination. You and I, side by side, taking the kind of steps that never hurry. We will descend into a landscape made of dust and moonlight, where the past doesn't shout, it murmurs, it waits, it rests. Picture a wide, quiet plain, so wide that the horizon feels like a calm breath held in the distance. There is no mountain to interrupt the sky. There are only low rises, round, gentle mounds that look almost natural at first, but they are not hills. They are layered memories. They are cities that once lived and then fell asleep, and then were built again on their own sleeping bones. One layer of mud brick, then another. One century, then another. A slow stacking of human mornings and human nights. In the Middle East, these mounds are often called tells. A tell is what happens when time does not move away from a place. Time stays, time presses down, softly but persistently. Walls collapse, new walls rise, streets fill in, new streets curve over the old ones, and after enough generations, a city becomes a small, rounded hill, like a book closed for a very long time. Now let your imagination walk toward one tell. As you get closer, the air changes, not dramatically, just enough. A hint of dryness, a faint warmth held in the soil, even after sunset. And the smell, earthy, ancient, uncomplicated. The kind of smell that makes you think of clay on a potter's wheel, or rain the day after it falls. Somewhere in that soil there is a small object no bigger than your hand, a rectangle of clay. Its edges are worn, its surface is not smooth, and if you tilt it toward the moonlight, you can see tiny marks, little wedges pressed in with patient pressure. Not ink, not paint, just impressions, like a voice that chose to become texture. 4,000 years is a long time, longer than most of us can truly feel, but clay can do something gentle and astonishing. Clay can hold on. When wet clay is pressed and then dried, or accidentally baked by a fire that once meant disaster, it becomes stubbornly durable. It becomes a quiet keeper, a memory that does not forget. And that is the soft miracle at the center of our story. Not catastrophe, not drama, but preservation. That someone long ago took an ordinary day and pressed it into earth. That someone believed a thought was worth making permanent. That someone wrote slowly. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Now let's return to the plain. Let the sky stretch above Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Even their names sound like water moving through reeds. In the daytime, this land could be harsh, bright sun, dust winds, heat that makes stone and bone feel dry. But at night, under a steady moon, it becomes something else. A calm stage, a place where even ruins seem to breathe. Somewhere in this land was a city called Ur. If you say the name softly, it feels like a single syllable of breath. Ur, a port city once, near where the river met the sea long ago. A city of merchants and priests, of narrow streets and courtyards, of ovens and lamps. And at its heart, rising above the flatness, stood a stepped temple tower, a ziggurat. Not sharp like a needle, solid, layered. Like a promise built out of patience. In the moonlight, the ziggurat would have looked like a dark mountain made of brick, and the bricks themselves would have carried fingerprints because every brick was touched, lifted, laid, smoothed, set in place. A million small human motions stacked into architecture. But tonight we will not climb that tower yet. We will begin lower, closer to the ground, closer to the people who made the city work. The people who counted barley, who measured wool, who recorded rations, who kept track of who owed what to whom. They were not the loud heroes of battle poems, they were scribes. And scribes in the ancient world were something like timekeepers. Imagine an inner room, cool and dim, a storage space in a temple complex, shelves made from wood and brick, stacks of tablets laid carefully, like loaves of bread cooling after baking. Each tablet is a small rectangle of wet clay that once rested on someone's palm. Each one carries a few lines of wedge-shaped marks, each mark made by a reed stylus. The reed is simple, a hollow stem from the riverbank, cut cleanly, held between fingers, pressed into clay at a slight angle, lifted, pressed again. The motion is repetitive, steady, almost like knitting, almost like counting breaths. If you listen closely, you can imagine the sound, not loud, a soft tick, a gentle tap. Clay receiving a mark, clay agreeing to remember. There is something about that rhythm that feels safe, because it is slow, because it repeats, because it does not demand excitement, it simply continues. And in a world like ours, where screens flicker, notifications insist, and time can feel like it's running, there is comfort in an ancient practice that moved at the speed of a hand. The scribes had schools, tablet houses, places where young students learned sign by sign. They practiced the same strokes again and again until their hands could form meaning without strain. No one became a scribe quickly. It took years, and the years were full of repetition, lists, proverbs, simple exercises that became gradually a doorway into literature. If you were to stand outside one of those schools at dusk, you might hear murmured recitations, a low chorus, words repeated until they settled into memory. And when the day's lessons ended, the students would smooth the clay, erase mistakes with water, begin again. A kind of permission to start over. Again and again. Now, here is the gentle twist, not a shock. just a soft shift of perspective. The scribes who wrote down barley and sheep also wrote down grief. They recorded the ordinary and they recorded the unbearable. They wrote not only accounts but laments, songs for cities that fell, poems that tried to hold a community's sorrow in language. One of these poems is known today as a lament for Ur. It is not a document with a tidy ending. It is a long, slow ache, a voice looking at a city that once seemed permanent and realizing with quiet astonishment that nothing stays, not walls, not kings, not even the feeling of being safe. And yet the poem survives, not in the air, not on paper, in clay, in small tablets that sat under collapsed roofs, hidden in a tell, waiting for hands in another era to lift them into light. Before we go any farther, let this moment stretch. Feel how your body already knows what to do when the night is kind. Your shoulders can loosen. Your jaw can unclench as if it has been holding a secret all day. And your breath, loyal, patient, can slow and lengthen like a river widening at a calm bend. In the world we're visiting, the air is cooler now. The heat has slipped away from the bricks. Somewhere nearby, water moves in the dark, the sound so steady it almost becomes silence. A few insects sing, not urgently, just because that is what they do. The moonlight turns the dust silver, and the silver turns the mind quiet. We are not here to solve anything. We are here to listen, to let the past become a gentle mirror, showing us that worry is not new and that relief is possible. If a thought tries to pull you back to tomorrow, imagine it as a small pebble. Set it down on the ground beside the tell. The earth can hold it for you. Now step with me into the storage room. The doorway is low. Inside, the air is shaded and still. Shelves line the walls, and on them rest tablets. Hundreds, maybe thousands, each one the size of a hand, each one a quiet rectangle of fired clay. Some are smooth, some chipped, some stamped with seals. All of them are calm, all of them are waiting. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away? Not because your life is small, but because time is wide, because you are held inside something larger than tonight. As we begin this journey, let's make a quiet agreement. We will not rush. We will not overload the mind with dates and names. We will let the history arrive the way moonlight arrives, softly, without force. And if your eyelids grow heavy, that is not a failure. That is the whole point. So, in your imagination, come with me toward that cool inner room, toward the shelves, toward the tablet that waits like a small sleeping seed. In a moment, we will lift it. In a moment, we will read the first few wedge marks, and the ancient city, quiet under the tell, will begin to speak in a voice made of earth. When you lift the clay tablet from the shelf, you feel its quiet honesty at once. It is heavier than you expect for something so small, as if the earth itself is lending its steadiness. The surface is cool and slightly uneven, like dried riverbank mud that still remembers water. Across it run rows of marks, tiny wedges pressed into soft clay, long ago, then fixed by time. They do not glow. They do not demand attention. They simply wait, patient as stone, gentle as sleep. Hold it in both hands for a moment, as if you are holding a warm mug on a winter evening. Let your thumbs rest along the edges. Feel the faint grain of grit within the clay. Imagine the room around you, this storehouse of quiet knowledge, cooler than the outside air, dim enough that every sound seems softer. Somewhere beyond the walls, night insects sing their small, steady song. And above the flat horizon, the moon keeps its calm watch. These wedges are a script called cuneiform. The word comes from the idea of a wedge shape because the stylus did not draw lines the way a pen does. a scribe used a cut reed, pressed at angles, lifting and pressing again. Each sign was a little arrangement of impressions, like a constellation you learn by looking slowly. It is easy at first to see only texture. But give your mind permission to be unhurried, and you begin to sense the presence behind the marks, a hand, a breath, a person who sat down and chose to write. Imagine a young student in an iduba, a tablet house, sitting cross-legged on a mat that smells faintly of reeds. A shallow bowl of clay rests nearby, kept damp under a cloth so it stays workable. Beside it, a small dish of water waits to smooth mistakes, because mistakes are expected and even the erasing is slow. A lamp of oil burns with a low, steady flame, making the shadows on the wall wobble like gentle waves. The teacher does not hurry them. He asks for steadiness. Press, lift, press again. The reed stylus taps the surface with a soft, dry sound. Each wedge is small, but together they become meaning. First, lists: barley, dates, sheep. Then, names of places along the river. Then proverbs, repeated until they feel like a lullaby. A calm heart makes a strong house. Outside, a courtyard fountain drips, one drop at a time, and nobody complains about the slowness. Somewhere beyond the school, the city is settling into evening. Bread cools on rooftops, dogs curl beside doorways. And over everything, the moonlight spreads like pale milk, reminding the student and us that learning can be patient and that patience can feel like safety. In that steady glow, even your own thoughts learn to soften. In the ancient world, writing was not only a tool, it was a discipline of attention. To write was to slow the body, steady the wrist, focus the eyes, required a kind of calm endurance. Small movements repeated until they formed a line, and then another line, and then a page of earthbound sound. There is something soothing about that even now, because your mind, your modern, busy mind, knows what it is like to be pulled in many directions. And it also knows deep down the relief of doing one thing at a time. If you like, take a gentle breath in as we look at the tablet. Not a forced breath. Just a slightly longer inhale than before. And then let it go, unhurried, as if you are exhaling warm air into cool night. Now imagine we step outside the storehouse and into the open air of Mesopotamia. The land between two rivers. Even in darkness you can sense the river's presence, not always visible, but felt. A faint dampness in the wind, a softness in the air near the banks. In places reeds whisper together, their thin bodies bending and returning. In places, canals have been cut through the soil so water can be guided calmly to fields and orchards. The sound is never loud, just a low, continuous moving, like time itself, flowing. In the distance, the city of Ur rests under the moon. Not a glittering city, not a sharp city, but a city made of earth tones, browns, sands, warm greys, built from mud brick shaped by hands. At night, the walls look gentle. Edges soften in moonlight. Corners lose their hardness. And every doorway becomes a small, black square of quiet. You can imagine walking along a street that curves a little, as if it has learned to move around courtyards and wells. The street is narrow enough that you feel sheltered by the walls, even without a roof. Your footsteps make a dull sound against packed earth. Somewhere behind a wall, someone stirs coals and the scent of smoke and bread drifts out, faint, comforting, domestic. A few lamps burn behind shutters, the light leaking through cracks like thin threads of gold. And beyond the houses, beyond the courtyards, the sky remains immense, the moon calm and full. If you look up, you might see the ziggurat. It rises from the flat city like a steady thought. Not frantic, not reaching in desperation, just present, layer upon layer, each terrace a quiet step toward the sky. In the daytime, its bricks would hold heat, and in the evening they would release it slowly like a stone that keeps warmth for those who sit nearby. Tonight, under the moon, it looks cool and dark, like a mountain made from patience. This city was once full of life. Workers, merchants, children, priests, scribes. The river carried boats. The markets offered grain and wool, oil and dates, and the moon above, so constant, so reliable, watched it all with the same pale light you are imagining now. In a world without electric lamps, the moon was not merely decoration, it was guidance, it was timing, it was reassurance, returning again and again. And now the most peaceful thing, the city is not demanding anything from you, it is simply there. A place you can walk through in your mind, slowly, safely, without consequence. A place where the day's urgency does not reach. A place where you can be present and nothing will ask you to perform. Sometimes when we feel anxious, it is because our minds are trying to protect us. They run through possibilities, they rehearse, they scan the horizon for problems. It can be exhausting, even when it comes from a place of care. So tonight, let the horizon be wide and empty. Let the only scanning be the gentle movement of your eyes across moonlit walls, across the dark line of the river, across the steady silhouette of the ziggurat. This is why a tell is such a kind image for sleep, because it shows us that cities rise and fall, and yet the earth remains. Layers form quietly. And within those layers, people leave behind small proofs of their ordinary lives, a receipt, a letter, a student's practice tablet. The world changes, but the human need to record, to remember, to make meaning, stays. If you walk farther, beyond the outer edges of you reach the tell itself. A rounded mound under moonlight, calm as a sleeping animal. It does not look like a ruin from a distance. It looks like a gentle rise in the land, and that is part of its beauty. Time does not always leave sharp scars. Sometimes it leaves soft shapes. Under the soil of the tell, layers of brick and ash and pottery rest in darkness. Whole neighborhoods, once loud with morning work, are now quiet in the way only centuries can be quiet. And within that quiet, tablets like the one in your hands waited. Not desperately, not impatiently, just waiting because Earth is good at waiting. Imagine, for a moment, the 19th century excavators arriving, careful hands and careful tools, lifting away soil inch by inch, finding these tablets by the thousands, a library of clay, a memory trove, so many small voices pressed into Earth, surviving because the Earth held them gently. It is a soft kind of continuity. People who wrote slowly, and people who later learned to read slowly. And now, here you are, living in a different century, in a different room, perhaps with a different kind of noise outside your window, yet still able to touch this same calm thread, still able to be soothed by something ancient and steady. The moon, after all, is the same kind of witness. It shines over your night, and it shone over theirs. It shone over scribes, smoothing clay with wet fingers. It shone over boats, gliding along canals. It shone over courtyards where families gathered after the heat of day. And long after those voices fell quiet, the moon kept returning. This is one of the reasons these stories can soothe the modern mind. When you are tired, your worries can feel huge, as if they are the only things that have ever existed. But the tell reminds us that human experience has always been layered. People have always worried. People have always hoped. People have always tried to make meaning in the middle of uncertainty. And somehow they still baked bread. They still watched the moon. They still wrote down proverbs, as if to say, quietly, that life is worth recording. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself, not for anyone else. Just as a small sign pressed into the clay of the internet that you were here and you chose rest. Now look again at the tablet in your hands. Not every tablet contains a poem. Many are humble, a list of rations, a note about barley, a receipt for wool. But somewhere on these shelves is a set of tablets copied and recopied by generations of students. They are not accounts, they are a lament. A long song for a voice from the past that does not scream, but sighs. And in that sigh there is a strange comfort, because it proves that even grief can be held gently, shaped into words, and carried across 4,000 years without losing its softness. In the next part, we will place the tablet under better light. We will let our eyes follow the wedges line by line. And we will hear very quietly how an ancient city learned to speak about change. We set the tablet down on a low wooden table near the doorway, where a ribbon of moonlight slips in and rests like silk. The light is not bright. It is the kind of light that doesn't wake the mind. It only reveals slowly, gently, what was already there. When your eyes settle on the surface, you begin to notice something soothing about the way the signs sit in lines. They feel like quiet footsteps, one after another. A measured pace, a path you can follow without rushing. And if your thoughts try to sprint ahead, you can let them. You don't have to chase them. You can stay here with the small, steady geometry of the wedges. Take a soft breath in, not a big breath, just a little deeper than before, and let it go as if you're fogging a window on a cold night. The room in your imagination remains cool and gentle, and the tablet remains patient. It has been patient for thousands of years. It can wait for you. Cuneiform can look at first like a field of tiny bird tracks, but the longer you look, the more you sense the intelligence of it. A reed stylus pressed and lifted, a few wedges angled this way, a few placed that way, signs that can stand for things, barley, sheep, oil, and signs that can stand for sounds, syllables, names, the rhythm of speech. Over centuries, the system became flexible, like a river that learns new bends. It began as counting and slowly became language. It began as practical and slowly became human. In a tablet house, the student might learn by copying lists again and again, not because anyone wanted to punish them with repetition, but because repetition was the doorway. The hand had to become calm. The eyes had to learn patience. The mind had to accept that knowledge arrives like dawn, not all at once, but gradually, softly. The most enduring things are often learned in slow layers. Sometimes the lists were ordinary, sometimes they were surprisingly tender. Proverbs that sound like quiet advice from a grandparent, little truths meant to steady a life. And once a student's hand was steady, once their memory was trained, they were trusted with longer texts, hymns, prayers, stories, and, in time, laments. A lament is a kind of writing that does not try to win. It does not try to impress. It does not try to fix what cannot be fixed. A lament simply stays with the feeling long enough to shape it into sound. It becomes a vessel, and a vessel, even when it holds sorrow, can be calming because it contains, because it gives form, because it says in a quiet way, you are not alone in what you feel. But for a long stretch of modern time, these tablets were silent to the people who found them. Imagine the first excavators opening the soil of a tell. The earth peels back like a blanket, and there, stacked under collapsed walls, are thousands of clay rectangles. They are warm with history and cool with dust. They look like messages. They look like they are trying to speak. Yet, to the modern eyes holding them, they are only marks, texture without sound, it must have been a strange feeling. To hold a library in your hands and not know how to read a single page. To feel that meaning is there but locked, like standing outside a house in winter and seeing firelight through the cracks but not knowing where the door is. The door, as it turns out, was not only in the soil of Mesopotamia, it was also carved into stone far away, a place where the land rises, where rock faces hold the sun by day and coolness by night. In western Iran there is a cliff with an ancient inscription cut high into the stone. When you imagine it, you don't have to imagine danger or drama. Just imagine height, distance, and patience. Imagine a wall of rock with writing on it like a frozen waterfall of symbols. The remarkable thing about this inscription is not that it is grand, it is that it repeats itself. The same message carved in more than one script. Like someone whispering the same sentence in different languages, hoping that at least one listener will understand. This is the kind of thing time sometimes offers. A key left in an obvious place if you are willing to look slowly. In the 19th century, scholars began to copy these stone signs carefully, not quickly, not in one ambitious afternoon. They copied them the way a scribe once copied a tablet, patiently, steadily, line by line. They compared the repeated clusters. They noticed patterns. They guessed that some groups of signs might be royal names, because names, like anchors, repeat. A king's name appears again and again in official writing. A place name returns like a familiar landmark. It is almost like listening to a song in a language you don't know. At first, it is only melody. Then you begin to notice the chorus. The chorus comes back, and you recognize it. And one day, without quite knowing when it happened, the chorus begins to mean something. That is what decipherment is, not a sudden lightning strike, more like fog lifting. You can imagine one of those scholars arriving before the heat, in the early hush of morning. The valley below is still blue with shadow, and the rock face holds the last coolness of night. A small satchel rests at his feet, paper, charcoal, a little water, perhaps bread wrapped in cloth. He does not come with urgency. He comes the way a careful listener comes to a story. He sits, looks up, and lets his eyes travel along the carved lines. He copies slowly, sign by sign, pausing often to rest his hand. Not because he is tired, but because accuracy is a kind of respect. The wind moves across the stone in soft breaths, and sometimes a bird passes through the sky like a quiet punctuation mark. Nothing demands speed, nothing insists. Only the steady presence of the writing, repeating itself in patterns waiting to be noticed. Day after day, the page fills. Not with conclusions, but with careful traces. And later, at a desk, those traces become comparisons. A cluster that appears again and again begins to feel like a name. A familiar group becomes a doorway. Translation in this sense is not conquest, it is companionship. It is staying with the unknown until it relaxes into understanding. There is a softness in that method. It teaches the modern mind something it rarely hears. You are allowed to learn without rushing. You are allowed to sit with silence. Meaning will come at its own pace. And when it does, it will not arrive like thunder. It will arrive like the morning sun, quietly warming the stone. And the world exhales. As the stone inscription yielded its first sounds, the scholars could start matching those sounds to other tablets. A sign on rock could explain a sign in clay. A name recognized in one place could open a sentence in another. And slowly, so slowly that it must have felt like watching a plant grow, cuneiform began to speak again. When it did, the first things it spoke were wonderfully ordinary. Inventory lists, trade receipts, records of grain. This might sound boring, but it is actually gentle proof, because the first words a revived language offers are not thunderous prophecies. They are daily life. They are the quiet scaffolding of a city. They are the soft hum beneath history's louder stories. And then, after the scaffolding was understood, something deeper came through: poems, prayers, hymns, laments, texts that were copied by students, not because they were new, but because they were worth remembering. Think about that for a moment. A lament for a fallen city, copied again and again in tablet houses. Young hands learning wedge marks by tracing sorrow that belonged to ancestors, not as a spectacle, as a lesson in impermanence, as a quiet training in the truth that cities rise and fall, and yet the human heart continues. If you are listening tonight, from a busy life, emails, meetings, lights that never fully dim, this is the part where history leans close and becomes kind, because it shows that even long ago people knew the feeling of things changing too fast. They knew the ache of losing what felt stable. And still they made room for gentle learning. They made room for steady work. They made room for words that could hold the sorrow without letting it spill everywhere. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away? Not because nothing matters, but because you can feel a wider rhythm, a tide, a long breathing of time. Now we return to the tablet on our table. In the moonlight, it is still quiet, but in our minds, it is no longer mute. We can imagine the wedges turning into syllables, the syllables gathering into lines, the lines becoming a voice, not a loud voice, a voice like wind through reeds, a voice like a person speaking from a doorway at dusk. This is where our story begins to narrow, not into tension, but into intimacy. We are about to listen to one specific text, a lament that has traveled through centuries of hands. We are about to hear what someone wrote when the beloved city, began to dim. And we will do it gently. We will not linger on anything harsh. We will listen the way you listen to rain when you are safe indoors. We will let the words be a low, steady sound that tells you, yes, things change, and yes, you can still rest. In the next part, we will lift the tablet closer to the light. We will trace the first line with our eyes. We will let the ancient voice begin, softly, like the first note of a lullaby that has waited a very long time to be heard. We bring the tablet closer, not as if we are trying to interrogate it, but as if we are trying to hear a quiet friend in a crowded room. The moonlight is thin here, so we imagine a small lamp with a steady flame. Its glow is soft and honey-colored, warming the clay just enough for the wedge marks to stand up as tiny shadows. If your eyes feel heavy, you do not need to focus hard. Let the lines arrive like a slow river, one quiet phrase at a time. And if you find yourself drifting, that is perfectly welcome here. The ancient lament does not begin with a trumpet. It begins with noticing a city once full of everyday sound becomes strangely still. The words do not rush to explain why. They simply stand at the edge of a familiar street and describe what the heart sees when something beloved starts to fade. In your imagination, we step out of the storehouse and into at night. The air is mild, cooler now than it was in the day. The bricks have released their heat and are settling into a calm temperature that feels almost friendly. A narrow street curves between walls that hold the moonlight as a pale wash. Here and there, a small oil lamp glows behind a shutter, and the light looks like a sleeping firefly. The lament's voice moves slowly through this scene. It speaks of doors that do not open as easily, of courtyards that are quieter than they should be. Not empty in a frightening way, but hushed, as if the city has started to hold its breath. It is the kind of hush you might recognize from your own life. When a busy season ends and your home suddenly feels too quiet and you realize how much sound you were leaning on. Was a city built from earth and intention. Mud brick shaped in molds, dried in sun, set in rows. Courtyards with wells and clay jars, rooftops where people slept in summer when the nights were kind, markets where grain was measured, wool was weighed, oil was traded. And at the center, rising above the flatness, the ziggurat stood like a steady thought, a mountain made by hands, a staircase for prayers. The lament looks up at that tower and describes it not as a monument, but as a home for meaning, a place where the city believed the sky could be reached without violence. In the moonlight, the steps are dark and silent. The wind moves across them, and the wind does not care who rules, or who worries, or who is tired. The wind simply moves. As we follow the lines, the poem begins to speak of change the way the sea speaks of tide. Not with sharp edges, but with a slow pull. There are hints of scarcity, hints of strain. The rhythm of daily life seems to stumble just a little, a delivery that does not arrive, a familiar voice that is not heard at the usual hour, a sense that the city's usual heartbeat has become uneven. Here is where the story remains gentle. We do not linger on anything graphic. We do not turn pain into spectacle. Instead, we stay with atmosphere, a city that feels less bright, a city that feels more tired, a city that is dimming its lamps, not as a choice but as a response. The lament, in its old, careful language, often speaks as if the city has a spirit, as if can feel, as if walls can mourn, as if streets can remember footsteps. This is not childish thinking. It is a human way of honoring the places that hold our lives. Even today, you might say, your kitchen feels warm, or your old neighborhood feels quiet, or a certain street feels like home. It is the same kind of language, stretched across centuries. At one point, the voice of the poem sounds almost like a whisper to the gods. Not an angry accusation, more like a tired question. Why does what we build with love have to change? Why does a stable world become unstable? These are questions without sharp answers, and that is why they can be soothing. Because you have asked versions of them too. In a hospital waiting room, in a dark hour at your desk, in a quiet moment after a long day when your mind refuses to shut its door. If you are listening tonight with a busy American life behind you, let this be a small comfort. A person 4,000 years ago had a mind that would not stop thinking. A community had a heart that had to learn how to live with uncertainty. And they did what humans often do when they cannot control events. And they wrote, they shaped feeling into lines, they made a container. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away? Not because your life is simple, but because you can feel the long rhythm of time and the way so many hearts have learned to breathe inside it. Now there is a soft discovery that scholars have noticed when they study this lament, not a sensational claim, not a final verdict, just an observation about the words themselves. And the poem does not speak only in the language of battle. It does not rely only on the usual imagery of enemies and weapons. In places, it uses vocabulary that feels closer to exhaustion, closer to weakness, closer to bodies that are drained rather than struck. The ancient language has ways of describing strength, and it has ways of describing weariness. And in this lament, the weariness has a particular tone. It is as if the city is not only attacked from outside, but also hollowed from within. As if hunger and sickness move like a quiet fog through houses, not a gruesome fog, just a thinning of energy, a dimming. Some researchers have wondered gently whether a time of disease might have traveled alongside famine and political collapse. We cannot know with absolute certainty. History rarely gives us that clean kind of knowing, but the possibility is there like a shadow at the edge of the lamp's glow. And we do not need to stare at it, we only need to acknowledge it as part of the city's tiredness. If that thought feels too heavy, you can set it down. Imagine placing it beside the tablet like a small pebble placed on a shelf. The clay can hold it. Time can hold it. You do not have to carry it in your chest. What matters for our gentle journey is the human response. The poem is not obsessed with catastrophe. It is attentive to fragility. It is a record of what it feels like when life becomes difficult and people keep trying to be people. They still sweep courtyards, they still draw water, they still light lamps when they can. They still hope for tomorrow, even as tomorrow grows uncertain. There is a kindness in that, because many modern anxieties are not dramatic either. They are not one big explosion. They are a slow accumulation, deadlines stacking, news cycles buzzing, bodies tired, sleep stolen in small pieces. And sometimes you do not need a heroic lesson. You need permission to be human, to admit you are tired, to let the world be imperfect while you rest. The lament offers another gentle idea, one that was common in Mesopotamian thought. Power, in their imagination, could move. Kingship was not glued forever to one place. It could be transferred, like a lamp flame passed from one wick to another. This is not necessarily comforting when you are the city losing the flame, but it does turn collapse into a kind of season, not a punishment, a shift, a tide. In the poem Beat, you can feel the struggle between love for what is familiar and acceptance of what changes. That struggle is very old. It is also very ordinary. You have felt it too when a chapter of your life ended and you wished it could stay. When a relationship changed, when a job ended, when a parent aged, when you realized time had been moving even when you were busy. So as we read, we do not force ourselves to be cheerful. We simply let the lines be honest. And honesty, when it is gentle, can calm the mind, because it stops the fight. It says, this is how it is right now, and you can still breathe. If you like, take one slow inhale, feel your chest rise, then let the exhale lengthen as if you are smoothing wet clay with the flat of your hand. Longer out than in, steady, even. The tablet under the lamp does not change. The wedges remain, the city in the imagination remains, and you, the listener, remain safe right where you are. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. At the end of this section of the lament, there is a sensation rather than a statement. It feels like the city is pausing, looking back, as if is turning its face toward the river and noticing that water still flows. Even when markets are quiet, even when courtyards are hushed, even when the world feels unsteady, the river continues, the moon continues, breath continues. Somewhere, a night watchman walks slowly along the wall, his lantern bobbing once, then again. The light does not alarm, it only marks time. With each step, you can let your thoughts grow quieter too, tonight. And that is our small cliffhanger for the night. If the river continues, what else continues? If the moon keeps returning, what can it teach a tired mind? In the next part, we will follow the lament's voice toward the riverside, and we will let the steady water show us how to release what we cannot hold. We step out from the cool storehouse into the open night, and the first thing you feel is space. The air is wider than a room. It moves around you without insisting. It carries the faint perfume of river reeds, damp earth, and smoke that has already softened into memory. Above, the sky is immense and uncomplicated, a deep bowl of darkness with a steady moon resting in it, calm, full, and unhurried. In the distance, is quiet, not erased, but resting. Its walls are still there, its streets still curling between courtyards, its rooftops still holding the last warmth of day. Yet the city feels as if it has lowered its voice, as if it is speaking in whispers so the night can remain kind. We walk slowly toward the river. The path is packed earth, smoothed by many feet. Here and there the ground is scattered with pale fragments of pottery that catch the moonlight like shells. The wind slides across the plain in long, gentle breaths, and each breath feels like an invitation to loosen something in your chest. As we near the water, the sounds change. The city behind us becomes softer, and the river becomes clearer. It is not loud, it does not rush. It moves with the steady confidence of something that has been moving for thousands of years. The Euphrates, or a canal branching from it, runs dark under the moon. The surface holds a faint shimmer, a slow silver trembling that looks like quiet laughter. Reeds along the bank sway and return, as if they are practicing patience. Insects sing in the grass, a small, repeating music that never asks you to keep up. If you have been carrying worries tonight, imagine them as little boats. Not heavy ships, just light boats made of woven reeds, the way people here have made them for a very long time. Each boat can hold one thought, a deadline, a conversation, a fear about the future, a memory that won't settle. You do not have to sink the boats. You do not have to fix what they carry. Simply place them on the water one by one and watch them drift. The current accepts them. The river does not judge what you are holding. It simply moves, and in moving, it teaches. Sometimes a small cargo boat passes slow and low, its hull sealed with dark bitumen that smells slightly tarry in the cool air. A single oar dips, lifts, dips again, leaving commas of ripples behind it. The boatman does not speak. He listens to the water and lets the water tell him the pace. Along the bank, date palms stand like quiet sentinels, their fronds combing the moonlight. From somewhere upstream comes the soft clack of pottery jars touching, as if the river is gently counting them. If a fish breaks the surface, it is only a brief kiss of sound, and then the night closes again. Watching all of this, you may feel your own thoughts begin to behave like the river, moving, not stuck, continuous, not sharp. Even your heartbeat can slow to match that patient motion. When it disappears beyond the reeds, you realize how wide silence can be, and you soften. Look at the water for a moment, the way you might look at a fireplace when you are safe indoors. Let your eyes rest on the slow motion of the surface. Let your mind follow the shimmer without trying to understand it. And as you watch, you may notice something very gentle. The river is a kind of time you can see. In time was not only counted by kings and wars, it was counted by water, by the flooding and receding, by the canals filling and emptying, by the measured distribution of irrigation to fields of barley and orchards of dates. Water moved through the city's life the way breath moves through your body, quietly necessary, always returning. You can even imagine a scribe, long ago, dipping his fingers into a small bowl of water to smooth a tablet's surface. A mistake is pressed too deep, a wedge placed at the wrong angle, and with a little water, the clay softens. The error becomes a blur, then a blank, then a new beginning. The scribe's palm moves across the clay in a slow circle, steady and forgiving. That small act, water softening what was too sharp, feels like a lesson meant for nights like this. If your thoughts have been too sharp today, if your self-criticism has pressed its wedges too deeply, imagine a quiet bowl of water beside you. Imagine dipping your hand in. Imagine smoothing the surface of your mind, not to erase who you are, but to give yourself room to begin again. The riverbank is cool now. If you sit down in your imagination, the earth supports you. The ground holds your weight without complaint. Your shoulders can drop, your jaw can loosen, your breath can lengthen the way the river lengthens into the dark. Try this, only if it feels natural. Breathe in as if you are drawing water into a canal, slowly, steadily, without strain. Then breathe out as if you are letting it flow onward, a little longer than the inhale, as if your exhale is the river's gentle current. In that simple rhythm, your nervous system hears something it understands: steady, safe, continuous. Across the water, the moon's reflection stretches into a pale path. It breaks and reforms with each ripple, never clinging to one shape. The reflection does not panic when it is interrupted. It simply becomes itself again. That is another quiet lesson. Your calm does not have to be perfect to be real. It can break and return. It can wobble and still be calm. Somewhere up the bank, you might see a small boat tied to a post. Its seams are sealed with dark bitumen, that ancient waterproofing that smells faintly like tar and sun-baked earth. The boat rests with its nose pointed into the current, ready but not urgent. Nothing in this landscape is urgent tonight. And because nothing is urgent, you can listen more closely to history, to water, to your own body. The lament we touched on earlier carries questions. Why does stability change? Why does a city dim? Why does the familiar become uncertain? Those questions do not disappear beside a river, but the river changes the way you hold them. It tells you without words that everything moves, and moving is not always a threat. In Mesopotamian thought, even kingship could move from one city to another as if power were a flame passed along. It could feel like loss, yes, but it was also a way of saying the world is not broken when it shifts. The world is simply shifting. Water understands this better than anyone. When a canal clogs, the flow finds another line. When a field dries, a new channel is cut, not with violence, but with steady work, not with drama, but with persistence. Now bring that back to your own life softly without forcing it. If a season has changed for you, if something you relied on has moved, you do not have to interpret it as personal failure. It may be a shift in the current, a new bend, a different route to the same ocean. You are allowed to adapt slowly. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to rest at the edge of the water and let the night hold the parts of you that have been holding everything else. And if your mind returns, as it often does, to the possibility of sickness, famine, exhaustion, the faint fog that may have drifted through in its decline, let the river meet that thought with gentleness. The river has carried many difficult seasons. It has carried many recoveries. It has carried grief and laughter alike, and it continues. The most soothing thing about this is not that hardship never happened. It is that life kept finding ways to be life. People still told stories. People still wrote proverbs. People still recorded the distribution of bread, the delivery of wool, the care of orchards. They kept building small structures of order, even when the larger world felt uncertain. That is what a clay tablet is, in its humble way, a small structure of order, a little rectangle of steadiness. And when you think of it like that, you can imagine your own bedtime as a kind of tablet house, a small room where you practice steadiness, where you repeat the same quiet rituals, dim lights, a soft story, a comfortable position, until your body learns the signs of safety. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Now, as we sit by the river, watch your little boats drift farther. The current carries them without hurry. One disappears around a bend, another follows. The water does not hoard, it releases. You can release too. You do not have to keep every thought on the surface. Some can sink gently into the dark, not as a disaster, but as a quiet letting go. If you listen closely, you might hear the river against the bank, a soft shushing sound like someone smoothing a blanket over a sleeping child. And somewhere behind us, in the city, a lamp dims. A door closes, a night watchman takes a slow step, then another. The world is settling. In a moment, we will return to the tablet, not to chase meaning, but to let meaning arrive the way water arrives, steady, patient, and kind. We will follow the scribes into a small, warm room where clay is shaped, corrected with water, and sometimes by accident or by design, hardened by fire. Because the next gentle truth is this: what becomes permanent is often born from softness. We leave the river behind, but we do not leave its lesson. The sound of water stays with us like a low note held under a song, steady enough that your thoughts can rest on it without effort. As we walk back toward the city, the air changes in small, kind ways. It is a little warmer near a wall that kept the day's heat. It is a little cooler when the path opens to the plain. The night does not rush us. It moves at the pace of a slow lantern, one calm step, then another. Is still quiet. The streets hold moonlight like pale dust. The ziggurat stands in the distance, dark and steady, a shape that does not argue with time. Somewhere behind a shutter, an oil lamp fades, and the fading feels gentle, like a voice lowering itself so someone can sleep. We turn toward a modest building near a courtyard, not grand like a temple, not busy like a market, but patient, like a place designed for repetition. This is a tablet house and a duba where students learn to write the world into clay. The doorway is low, inside the air is cooler. A few lamps glow, small and steady, making the room feel like a pocket of warmth inside the larger night. Along one wall, shallow trays hold lumps of prepared clay, each one covered with damp cloth, so it will not dry too quickly. The smell is earthy and clean, like rain on soil. If you listen, you can hear the faint sound of hands moving, fingers pressing, palms smoothing, as if the room itself is practicing calm. A student sits cross-legged on a woven mat. There is no hurry in his posture. He leans forward slightly as if leaning toward a story. In front of him lies a fresh tablet, soft and cool. It is the size of his hand, its surface is smooth from careful smoothing, and it holds a faint sheen where water still lingers. Beside him is a reed stylus cut cleanly so one end forms a small wedge. He picks it up the way you might pick up a spoon, simple and familiar. He presses it into the clay. A tiny mark appears. He lifts. He presses again. Another mark. A line begins, not quickly, but steadily, like a slow walk along a riverbank. This is how writing happens here. Not with speed, but with attention. Not with flourishes, but with small, repeated gestures. The room is full of those gestures, and each gesture is a kind of breath. In one corner, a teacher speaks softly. His voice is low and even, not a scolding voice, not a dramatic voice, but the voice of someone who has watched many seasons pass and learned to trust the slow ones. He offers a proverb for the students to copy, and the proverb carries the same warmth as a hand on a shoulder. Outside, the courtyard is quiet. A jar of water sits by the door. Occasionally, a student dips fingers into it and smooths a mistake away, turning a sharp, wrong mark into softness again. The clay accepts correction without resentment. It becomes blank. It becomes ready. There is something deeply soothing about this, especially to a modern mind that is often asked to be perfect on the first try. Here, the world expects practice. Here, the world expects gentle revision. And the lesson is not only about letters, it is about living. Now, among the lists and exercises, there are also texts that students copy because they are part of the shared memory of a people. Hymns that praise the moon, stories that teach caution and courage, and sometimes laments. On a shelf near the back, wrapped in cloth, is a set of tablets used for advanced copying. Their surfaces are covered in careful lines, and the wedge marks feel older, as if they have been copied so many times that they have learned to settle into the clay with confidence. These are not accounts of grain. These are not receipts. These are words meant to hold a city's feeling. Tonight, we imagine a student unwrapping one of those tablets. He does it with both hands, respectfully, like opening a small wooden box passed down in a family. The cloth falls away. The tablet rests in his palms, cool and firm. He studies the lines, then lowers his gaze to a fresh piece of clay and begins to copy. Press, lift, press, lift. Each impression makes a faint, dry click, the gentlest punctuation. The stylus meets the clay, and the clay receives it the way a pillow receives the shape of a head. The student pauses now and then, not to think harder, but to soften his wrist, to blink slowly, to listen. Somewhere a small moth circles the lamp, quiet as dust. Nothing startles. Everything repeats, and repetition becomes rest for you, for me, for tonight. The rhythm is steady, so steady that your own body may want to match it. If you like, you can let your breathing follow the pattern. In, gentle and quiet. Out, a little longer. No strain, no performance. Just a calm repetition. The lament itself, copied line by line, speaks of as if it were a living thing. Streets that once held laughter now hold hush. Courtyards that once filled with footsteps now hold stillness. The words do not try to frighten. They do not paint horror in bright colors. They speak in the muted tones of twilight, the way a tired person speaks when they are honest. And here is the soft discovery we came for tonight, the one that feels like a small lantern rather than a spotlight. Clay is soft. That is its nature. It yields. It takes the shape of a hand. It can be smoothed, corrected, changed. It seems temporary, but fire changes clay. Not always in a planned way, not always with ceremony. Sometimes, in the life of a city, fires happen. A roof beam collapses, a storeroom catches, a kiln overheats. In difficult times, flames move where no one wanted them, and when those flames pass over tablets, the tablets harden. A thing that was meant to be revised becomes permanent. It is strange, and it is tender. The same element that can destroy can also preserve. A tablet baked by accident becomes a kind of time capsule. It turns soft marks into enduring ones. It carries a voice forward, not because anyone controlled the future, but because the earth and fire did what they do. If that feels heavy, let it soften. We do not need to picture chaos. We only need to picture transformation. A warm glow, heat rising, clay changing its nature. The students in the tablet house do not talk about this as a miracle. For them, it is simply part of the world's texture. Bricks are fired, pots are fired, sometimes tablets are fired too, intentionally when they must last, or unintentionally when the city's story takes a harsh turn. Either way, the result is the same. The words stay, and the word staying is the gentle gift because it means that people who lived long ago, who felt tired long ago, who watched their city change long ago, still reach you now through something as humble as earth. When you are anxious at night, your mind may feel like soft clay, too easily marked by the sharp stylus of the day. A harsh email becomes a deep wedge, a news headline becomes a heavy impression, a single awkward moment becomes a whole line you cannot stop rereading. So tonight, let the image of water return, let it smooth the clay, let it make the surface gentle again, and then let the image of fire arrive, not as fear, but as warmth. Not a blazing drama, but a slow heat that firms the edges of what matters and releases the rest. What matters in this story is not the perfect memory of facts. What matters is the feeling of continuity, the sense that the human heart has always been writing itself into the world, and that the world has always been holding those writings in quiet shelves. The teacher's voice in the corner is still calm, the students are still copying, the lamps are still steady. Outside, with the courtyard fountain, drips once, then again like a metronome for sleep. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away a little, the way a smudge fades under a wet palm? Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Near the back of the room is another shelf, lower than the others. On it sit tablets that are not for practice, tablets kept because they belong to the city's memory. Some have the faint impression of a seal, a rolling pattern pressed into clay long ago, like a signature made of texture. When the lamplight brushes over those patterns, they look like waves on sand. We kneel beside that shelf, you and I, and we choose one tablet, not because it is the most famous, but because it feels ready. It is small, slightly chipped on one corner, and the wedges are neat, as if the scribe who made them had a very steady hand. We lift it, we tilt it. We let the light fall across the first line. And there, near the beginning, is a phrase that feels like a doorway, a phrase that suggests the city is not only falling, but changing into another kind of state, like a person drifting from waking into sleep. In the poem's voice, is becoming quiet. Is being asked to release. In the next part, we will follow that phrase deeper. We will listen to how the lament turns change into something almost tender, and how a city, even in its sadness, can teach a tired modern listener the art of letting go. We hold the tablet under the lamplight until the wedges begin to feel like a familiar path, not because we force our attention, but because attention, when it is tender, naturally settles. The room around us stays quiet, the low breath of night, the faint perfume of clay and oil, the soft creak of wood as the shelves rest under their own age. Outside, is still under the moon. And inside, the lament continues, not as a storm, but as a slow weather of the heart. The voice on the tablet seems to walk through the city as if walking through memory. It notices details the way a tired mind notices them at night, small things that carry a larger meaning. A doorway that used to swing easily, now stiff. A courtyard that used to echo with voices, now holding only the sound of a broom. A street that once felt busy, now feeling wide. The words do not shout, and that is what makes them powerful. They speak as if speaking close to the ear, the way someone speaks when they do not want to wake a sleeping child. We let the lines flow into us in the gentlest way. If you are listening in bed, you can imagine the tablet's cool weight in your hands. You can imagine the lamp's warm circle of light. You can imagine the city beyond the walls, settling, dimming, becoming softer. And if your thoughts keep trying to return to your own world, tomorrow's schedule, unanswered messages, the unfinished corners of the day, Let them float by like reeds drifting in the river. We are not grabbing anything tonight. We are letting things move. In the lament, there is a quiet idea that appears again and again like a refrain. It is the idea that kingship can travel, not as a rumor, not as a scandal, but as a natural shift in the world's order. In the imagination of ancient Mesopotamia, power was not always a permanent possession. It was a kind of torch, a flame that could be passed from city to city, a lamp that might burn on one altar for a while, then, without cruelty, without drama, be carried to another place. This does not make loss pleasant, but it changes the shape of loss. It turns collapse into a season. It turns the end of one chapter into the beginning of another. And for a mind that feels anxious, this is strangely soothing, because anxiety often comes from the belief that change is always a threat. The lament offers another possibility. Change can be a transfer, a movement, a tide. If you like, take a slow breath as we sit with that idea. Inhale as if you are lighting a lamp. Exhale as if you are placing that lamp on a safe shelf. The shelf will hold it. You do not have to keep it in your hands. Now imagine the ziggurat again. It rises in the distance, stepped and steady. In daylight it might seem imposing. At night it feels quieter, like a silhouette cut from the dark. Its terraces are layered the way the tell is layered, the way memory is layered, the way your life is layered, days stacked upon days. A ziggurat is not a single leap upward. It is a series of gentle climbs, one level, then another, a patient architecture. In the poem's world, the ziggurat belongs to the moon. The moonlight paints the edges of bricks, turning rough surfaces into soft lines. A faint wind slides across the steps, and you can imagine it making a low, almost inaudible sound like breath passing through a reed flute. The city below is quiet, and the tower stands as if it is listening too. What is the lament really doing here in this slow, moonlit scene? It is doing something many people do when life changes. It is naming what it loves, because naming is a kind of holding, not a gripping hold, a gentle hold. When the poem names courtyards, gates, temples, streets, it is saying, you mattered, you were real, you were home. This is one of the softest gifts history can give a modern listener. It reminds you that grief is not only about tragedy. Sometimes grief is about a routine that ended, a neighborhood you left, a job you outgrew, a season of life that passed, a person who changed, a version of you that you miss. And because these losses are not always dramatic, we often tell ourselves we should be over them already. But the ancient poem does not hurry. It gives lost time. It gives love time. If you are someone who has been holding too much, this is where the story becomes a hand on your shoulder. It says, you are allowed to feel the weight. You are allowed to lower it. You are allowed to rest. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away, just a little, when you imagine change as a tide instead of a threat? We return our eyes to the tablet. In a few lines, the voice shifts from describing the city to describing what the city cannot control. The poem speaks as if the wind itself has changed direction, as if the river has become less predictable, as if the familiar patterns of daily life have loosened. It is not a panic. It is a noticing. And noticing when it is calm is a form of wisdom. There is a moment, subtle and moving, when the poem seems to accept that a city can be asked to release, not because it deserves punishment, not because it failed, but because time turns, because the world shifts, because even strong walls are part of the earth, and the earth is always rearranging itself. If that thought feels too big, we make it small. We bring it back to the clay. Clay is earth, softened by water. It can be shaped, it can be smoothed, it can be pressed with careful marks, and then, with time, it can harden. The tablet is a quiet metaphor, softness becoming form, then form becoming memory. In your own life, you may feel soft right now, tired, sensitive, a little raw. That softness is not weakness. It is the state that allows reshaping. It is the state that allows healing. It is the state that allows sleep. Imagine the scribe who copied the lament. He sits in the tablet house in lamplight. His hand moves slowly. His breath is even. He is not trying to be original. He is trying to be faithful. He is carrying a voice across time, like carrying water in a jar, careful not to spill. And as he copies, the words become a kind of quiet companionship. For him, for the students who learn them, for you tonight. There is another gentle thing hidden in this process. The lament was not copied once, it was copied many times, again and again, not because people enjoyed sadness, but because the text offered something steady. It offered language for change. It offered a way to place grief somewhere outside the body, a way to make sorrow into lines that can be set down. If you have been holding your worries inside your chest, consider this. You can place them somewhere, not forever, just for tonight. You can place them beside this tablet, on this wooden table, under this quiet lamp. The past is strong enough to sit with them. You are allowed to put them down. On the tablet, the lament speaks in a way that surprises the modern ear. It treats change as something that can be carried, not something that must be fought. In old Mesopotamian imagination, kingship could be moved from one city to another like a small lamp flame traveling through the dark. The mind needed a shape for loss. If grief has a shape, it becomes easier to hold. Picture a courtyard at dusk. A clay lamp sits on a ledge, its oil gleaming. The wick burns steadily, lighting a jar of water and a bowl of dates. Someone cups the flame with a hand and leans it toward a second lamp. The new wick catches, and the light continues quietly, without urgency, until the first can rest. The lament borrows that image to soothe itself. The world does not end, it shifts. What is left behind is not worthless. It is simply quiet, like soil after harvest, like streets after the market closes. If you have lived through a change you did not choose, you may recognize this tenderness. You can be a place the flame once lived and still be worthy of warmth. You can let a season pass without calling yourself broken. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you feel your own worries loosen even a little, as if they are finally allowed to move? Take a slow inhale as if you are holding that lamp in your palms. On the exhale, imagine the flame lowering, gentle and safe. If tonight's story brings up a memory of a move, a farewell, a quiet ending, you can share it below when you're ready, or keep it private and let the night hold it for you tonight. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. We let our eyes drift from the tablet to the doorway. Outside, the moon is still there. The river is still moving. A distant dog barks once, then stops, as if remembering the night is for sleep. A breeze slides through the street and brushes your skin like a cool hand. The city is not rushing. The world is not demanding. In the next part, we will take a slow walk up the ziggurat steps, not to chase the gods, not to chase meaning, but to look out over the plain and feel how wide time really is. We will carry the tablet's calm voice with us, and we will see how a single moonlit view can make the mind unclench. We begin the climb the way the night asks us to do everything. Slowly, not as a test, not as a challenge, but as a gentle rhythm. The ziggurat stands ahead of us like a patient staircase made for thoughts that want to settle. Its bricks are dark in the moonlight, but their edges catch a pale silver, soft as dust. At the base, the air feels cooler. Stone and fired brick hold night like a quiet secret. You can imagine placing your palm on the surface and feeling its faint grain, the tiny unevenness left by hands that shaped and stacked and smoothed. Nothing here is sharp. Even the angles seem softened by time. We take the first step, then another. Each step is wide and steady, built to be walked without hurry. And as we rise, the city behind us becomes quieter, not because it disappears, but because distance turns noise into hush. Somewhere below, a courtyard lamp is still burning. From up here, it looks like a small ember, a friendly dot of light in a wide, dark field. If you are listening from a busy life, let these steps be your permission. Permission to do one thing at a time. Permission to breathe. Permission to loosen your shoulders as if you were taking off a coat you wore all day. We climb in a calm cadence. The wind meets us higher up, gentle and dry. It carries the faint smell of bitumen from the bricks, that old waterproofing that once sealed boats and mortar and roofs. It is an earthy scent, slightly tarry, and it feels oddly grounding, like incense made from the real materials of a city. Halfway up, we pause. Not because we are tired, but because pausing is part of the story. From here, you can see the narrow streets of Ur as faint lines and the rooftops as low shapes. Everything looks simpler from above. Problems shrink, patterns appear. And in your own mind, you may notice the same thing. When you step back, thoughts become less urgent. Take a slow inhale. Then let the exhale be longer, as if you are letting the wind carry it outward. The night does not ask you to hold yourself tightly, it asks you to release. We continue upward. The steps feel ancient, but they also feel familiar, because you have climbed other staircases in your life. You have climbed into new seasons. You have climbed away from old habits. You have climbed out of difficult days. And sometimes, without noticing, you have climbed toward calmer ones. At the top terrace, the world opens. The plain spreads out in every direction, wide and flat and moon-washed. The river is a dark ribbon, and along its edges, the reeds are a thin, trembling border. Farther out, the tell mounds are small, rounded shadows like sleeping animals scattered across the land. And above all of it, the sky is enormous. Stars are scattered lightly, not crowded, and the moon sits among them with steady confidence. Its light does not compete, it simply arrives. Now let the lament on the tablet return to your mind. Not the sadness of it, but the shape of it. A voice that does not panic. A voice that says, things change. A voice that holds loss without making it loud. From up here, that voice feels less like grief and more like wisdom. The city below is real, yes. But it is also one layer among many layers. This is the softest kind of discovery. Not a secret revealed, but a perspective gained. From the ground, a city feels like everything. From above, it becomes part of a wider landscape. From inside a worry, your worry can feel like the whole sky. From a higher place, it becomes a passing cloud. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away, even a little, when you imagine time as a wide plain beneath a calm moon? Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. On the terrace, there might be a small shrine, a place where offerings were once made, Not loud ceremonies, not dramatic gestures, but simple ones. A bowl, a lamp, a quiet prayer. In ancient Ur, the moon was not just an object in the sky. The moon was a companion, a keeper of months, a returning light. It marked time in a way that felt gentle and reliable. You can imagine a priest long ago standing where we stand now. He looks out across the river and the fields. He watches the moon rise. He does not force meaning. He lets meaning arrive. And if he feels fear about the future, he does what humans often do. He repeats a ritual. He lights a lamp. He speaks a familiar line. Repetition steadies the heart. That is what this story is doing for you tonight. It is a ritual made of words. It is a slow walk up ancient steps. It is a steady view that reminds your nervous system you are safe enough to loosen. From here, you can also picture the tablet house. A small room below, warm with lamp glow. Students bending over soft clay. A reed stylus pressing, lifting, pressing. The sound is not loud. It is the quiet tick of memory being made. And somewhere, on a shelf, the lament tablets rest. They have been copied before. They will be copied again. Not because people want to stay sad, but because the text teaches something tender. It teaches how to carry change. It teaches how to set grief down without throwing it away. It teaches how to let a city become a memory without turning the memory into a wound. You may have your own lament, even if you never call it that. A chapter of life that ended, a place you left, a person you miss, a version of yourself that felt simpler. If that is true, you do not have to solve it tonight. You can simply acknowledge it softly, the way the moon acknowledges the plain, without judgment, without argument. Imagine setting that personal memory beside the clay tablet, not as a burden, but as a small object on a shelf. The shelf holds it. Time holds it. You do not have to keep it in your hands. The wind up here is steady. It moves over the bricks and across your skin. It does not demand anything. It does not ask for an answer. It simply continues. And you can let your thoughts continue too, but more slowly, more gently. If your mind tries to plan tomorrow, let it plan with less intensity. If it tries to replay today, let it replay like a distant song in another room. The terrace is your place of distance, your place of softness. Before we go down, linger with the view a little longer. Let your eyes travel across the plain the way your fingers might trace a familiar photograph. You can see the faint geometry of canals, pale lines that guide water like calm intentions. Near the river, darker patches suggest gardens and orchards, date palms perhaps. Farther out, the land opens into a wide hush where soil and sky meet without interruption. Somewhere out there are other tells, rounded shapes barely visible, sleeping under the same moon. Up here, the city's sounds become a thin tapestry, a cough, a murmur, a jar set down, then stillness. Nothing competes. Everything is spaced out like stars. In the spaces, your thoughts can finally stretch. This height also changes the lament's feeling. From the street, loss feels close, like a door that will not open. From the terrace, loss becomes part of a larger movement, like a tide sliding along a shore. The poem's idea of transfer begins to make sense in the body. Something can move on, and yet what remains can still be held with love. If you want, place a hand on your chest or simply imagine that warmth. Breathe in slowly through your nose. Breathe out a little longer, as if you are letting a lamp's heat soften the air around it. The ziggurat does not require effort. It offers a vantage point for surrender. In ancient Ur, this tower was also a way of keeping time. People watched the moon, noticed the seasons, and listened for the river's changes. and scribes in quiet rooms pressed those observations into clay. The past did not survive because it was loud. It survived because it was recorded again and again with steady hands. That is the small comfort for tonight. Your calm can be recorded too. Each time you return to a slow breath, you leave a gentle mark. Each time you release a thought and let it drift, you carve a softer path through the night. Over time, those marks become your own private archive of safety. From here, even the worry of a single day looks small, like a footprint that wind will soften. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You only have to be here, breathing, while the moon holds its calm position above the ancient bricks, as it always has. Now we begin to descend, because every climb is followed by a return. We go down the steps the way you might drift down towards sleep. One level, then another. The city grows closer, the lamp glow grows warmer, and your body may feel heavier in the pleasant way that means it is ready. At the base of the ziggurat, the night feels thicker, like a blanket. The river's low sound returns, the tablet's quiet presence returns, and our story begins to settle into its final movements. In the next part, we will return to the shelf of tablets one last time. We will place the lament gently back where it belongs, and we will let the idea of clay, soft, corrected by water, strengthened by time, become a simple promise for your own rest. We walk back into the storehouse the way you might step into a quiet library at the end of the day. The doorway is low and the air inside is cooler, shaded, gently, still. It smells of clay and dust and old wood warmed by lamps. The shelves rise along the walls in patient rows, and on them sit the tablets, small, earth-colored rectangles that have learned the art of waiting. For a moment, we simply stand there. Not because we need to do anything, but because the stillness itself is a kind of medicine. Outside, the night continues to breathe across the plain. Inside, the words of the lament settle into your body like a slow tide, finally reaching a calm shore. We carry the tablet carefully, not with reverence that feels heavy, but with gentleness that feels natural. Its weight is modest, yet it holds so much. The marks on its surface are not loud, but they are precise. A long-ago hand pressed them with steady attention. A long-ago mind chose to make feeling into form. And now you and I have listened. We have walked through moonlit streets. We have sat by the river. We have climbed the steps of the ziggurat. We have let time widen around us until the day's urgency grew smaller. If your eyelids are heavier now, that is welcome. If your breath is slower, that is perfect. And this story was never meant to energize you. It was meant to soften you. It was meant to offer your nervous system a landscape where nothing jumps out, nothing demands, nothing pushes. Only the calm repetition of steps, of water, of clay. We return the tablet to the shelf. The spot is not labeled with neon signs. It is marked by quiet order, an understanding passed from one keeper to another. We slide the tablet back into place and it touches its neighbors with a small, dry sound. Clay to clay, earth greeting earth. It is a sound so gentle it feels like a whisper of closure. And in that moment, a thought arrives, softly, as if it has been waiting for the right room. The thought is this: you do not have to keep every memory awake. You do not have to hold every worry in your hands. Some things can be stored. Some things can be set down. Some things can be kept safely outside your body, like a tablet on a shelf. This is one of the most tender truths of these ancient archives. They were built in part to protect the mind, to free people from having to remember everything, to let the city breathe, because the city did not need to carry its entire life inside a single person. A scribe wrote down the ration list so a manager could sleep. A student copied a proverb so a teacher could trust the next generation. A lament was pressed into clay so grief could have a place to rest. If you want, you can do the same tonight. Not with clay perhaps, but with imagination. Picture a shelf in this cool room. On it are empty spaces waiting for whatever you have been holding too tightly. One by one, place your thoughts there. A meeting, a bill, or a difficult conversation, a fear about the future, a regret from the past. You are not throwing them away, you are simply storing them. The shelf can hold them while you sleep. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away when you imagine a place that can hold them for you? A place made of earth and time and patience. There is another gentle detail that scholars have noticed in many tablets. Some end with a few extra lines, quiet notes from the scribe. Not dramatic signatures, just simple markers. A name, a line count. Sometimes a phrase that says, in effect, this is finished. These are called colophons. They are the ancient equivalent of a soft closing, a reminder that even long texts have an ending. Even intense feelings can be brought to rest. Even grief can be set down with care. You can borrow that idea tonight. You can offer yourself a colophon. Not in words you have to craft perfectly, just a feeling of completion. A small inner whisper. For now this day is finished. For now I can stop revising. For now I can stop rereading. For now I can be allowed to rest. We walk slowly along the shelves. Some tablets are thick, some thin. Some are neatly shaped, others chipped. A few have rounded corners from being handled again and again. And it's strangely comforting to realize that perfection was never the requirement. Survival was, care was, steadiness was. A chip on an edge did not erase meaning. A crack did not cancel memory. The tablets held anyway. You can hold anyway, even if you are tired, even if you feel a little cracked at the edges from the year, or the week, or the day. You can still be worthy of gentleness. You can still be held by the night. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. We pause at a shelf where laments are kept. In our imagination, the tablets are arranged not as trophies, but as companions. They were copied because people needed them, because words can do what hands sometimes cannot. Words can carry, words can soothe, words can say, this has happened before and humans have survived it, and you will too. In one corner of the storehouse, a shallow basket holds a few blank tablets, soft clay covered with damp cloth. They are waiting for tomorrow's writing. The sight is reassuring. It means the story is not finished. It means the future still has room for new marks, for calmer lines, for ordinary days that do not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. We let our fingers rest on the cloth for a moment. Cool moisture lives underneath like a river. Softness again, not weakness, beginning. A surface that can be shaped with care and gently smoothed when the day pressed too sharply. And if you worry that rest will erase what matters, remember the simple truth of clay. Softness can become form. Form can become memory. Sleep does not erase you, it steadies you, the way gentle heat steadies earth. We take one last look at the shelf where the lament rests. The tablet does not ask you to memorize its lines. It does not demand that you carry a city's sorrow. It simply exists, proof that humans have always tried to make peace with change and have always needed places to set that change down. If tonight's story brought you calm, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself when you're ready. Not to perform, not to prove you listened, just a small sign that you chose softness. We turn toward the doorway. The lamplight behind us is warm and low. Ahead, the night air waits like a cool sheet. And this is our quiet cliffhanger, as gentle as a closing eyelid. If the archive can hold a city's grief for 4,000 years, what might it hold for you for one night? What would it feel like to hand your worries to time just until morning? In the next part, we will return once more to the river's edge and the quiet courtyards of Ur. We will let the story narrow into a lullaby, and we will practice, together, the art of releasing the day. We step out of the storehouse and let the cool night air touch our faces again. It feels clean, as if it has been rinsed by distance and moonlight. Behind us, the shelves of clay tablets keep their patient silence. Ahead of us, Ur lies low and calm, its walls and rooftops softened by the dark. We walk without a destination that demands us. We simply move the way a thought moves when it is no longer chased. One slow step, then another. The earth under our feet is firm and slightly warm, still holding a trace of the day. Above, the moon hangs steady, not urging us forward, only making enough light to feel safe. We pass a narrow street where the packed ground has been smoothed by many footsteps. The walls on either side are quiet, made of mud brick that looks almost velvety under moonlight. A doorway here, a shutter there. Most of them are closed, as if the whole city has agreed to rest. Now and then, a faint glow slips through a crack, warm as a small ember. In one courtyard, a clay jar stands near a well. Even in the dark, you can imagine the coolness of the water inside. A rope rests against the rim, and a bucket hangs patiently waiting for morning. A date palm leans slightly over the wall, its fronds whispering together, a gentle, repeating sound. If you listen closely, you may hear a drip, slow and regular, the kind of rhythm that never makes you tense. We pause at the edge of that courtyard, not to intrude, not to stare, only to feel the atmosphere. Courtyards are quiet centers, little private skies within a city. They hold ordinary life, bowls, baskets, woven mats, the soft trace of footsteps, and at night they hold something even more precious. They hold the feeling that a home can be a shelter for the nervous system. If you're listening tonight with your own home around you, let this image borrow its calm. Imagine your room as a courtyard, the ceiling as a private sky, the fan or distant traffic as a soft wind beyond the walls. You do not have to solve the world tonight. You only have to be here, inside your small, safe square of darkness. We continue walking. At the next corner, the street bends gently as if it has learned to move around wells and walls without conflict. A stray dog lies curled beside a doorway, its body a quiet comma in the sentence of the night. It lifts its head once, then settles again. Nothing is threatening. Everything is slowing. The lament we listened to earlier follows us, but it has changed. It is no longer a heavy stone in the chest. It feels more like a low, steady bell in the distance. A reminder, not an alarm. A human voice that learned to speak of change without making change sound like the end of everything. As we pass another courtyard, we see a small oil lamp on a ledge. The flame is low, protected from wind. It does not flicker wildly. It simply burns, quietly transforming oil into light. That kind of simple steadiness can feel like a lesson. You do not have to become a blazing beacon. You only have to be enough light for the next gentle step. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away when you remember how many nights have held humans before you? How many people have sat in courtyards under moons with tired bodies and busy minds and still found their way to sleep? We turn toward the riverside again, but we do not hurry. The path widens slightly as the houses thin. The air becomes cooler, and the scent of reeds returns, soft and damp. some where a bird shifts on a branch, then becomes still. The river itself is a dark ribbon, and the moon lays a pale path across it, broken and reformed by ripples. We stop at the edge of the water, not to do anything dramatic, only to watch. The surface moves with a calm confidence, a motion that does not startle. The reeds sway, then return. A small insect lands on the water, makes a circle, and lifts away. The river accepts all of it and continues. Now imagine that the river is the breath of the earth. It draws in and lets out again and again. On the far bank, a line of palms stands in silhouette, their crowns combing the moonlight into soft strands. A small boat is tied to a post, the rope slack, trusting the current. You can almost smell the bitumen in its seams, earthy and faintly sweet, like sun stored inside dark resin. Somewhere upstream, a jar touches another jar with a quiet clink. Then silence returns and covers it like cloth. If you listen longer, you may hear your own breathing blending with the water, and for a moment it becomes hard to tell where you end and the night begins. Let your shoulders melt, as if they are made of warm wax. Let your thoughts float in slow circles as ripples do. And if a worry rises, greet it gently, then watch it drift downstream, smaller and smaller, until it is only another star reflection, breaking and reforming. You do not need to follow it. You can stay on the bank, blinking, letting go. And you, too, can become simple like that. If you want, breathe in gently. And then breathe out a little longer, as if your exhale is the river sliding onward in the dark. No forcing, no performance, just a quiet lengthening. We think again of the tablet on the shelf, a small rectangle of fired clay. A surface once soft enough to change, a surface that could be smoothed with water when the stylus pressed too sharply, a surface that became firm so the marks would last. That image can be yours tonight. If your mind feels marked by the day, imagine warm water smoothing it. If your heart feels too soft, imagine a gentle heat giving it shape. Not hardening you into coldness, only making you steady. The river makes a soft shushing sound against the bank. It is almost like a lullaby without words. If you have been lonely at night, let this sound be company. Let it be proof that something in the world keeps moving with you. Even when you are quiet here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. We turn back toward the city, and as we do, we notice the simplest beauty. For all its history, is made of ordinary things: bricks, water, oil, reeds, hands, breath, time. The great and the small are woven together, and your life is like that too. Even if you feel overwhelmed by big thoughts, the path back to calm is often made of small, steady things. A slower breath, a softer jaw, a shoulder unraised, a story that does not shout. We walk once more through the streets. The city feels quieter now than before, as if our own calm has rubbed off on it, or perhaps it is the other way around. Perhaps the city has been calm all along, and we simply needed time to notice. In the distance, the ziggurat stands as a dark shape against the sky. We do not climb it again. We do not need to. We have already seen how wide the plain is. We have already felt how small a single day can become when time is allowed to widen. Now we only need to return to the shelf, to the place where the tablet rests, to the place where worries can be stored. Back inside the storehouse, the lamp is still burning low. The flame has grown smaller, the shadows are softer. We move between the shelves, and it feels like walking between rows of sleeping seeds. Each tablet holds a little piece of someone's attention. Each one is proof that humans have always tried to make order, always tried to make meaning, always tried to make peace. We find the shelf where the lament tablet rests. It sits among others, quiet and secure. We do not take it down again. We do not need more lines tonight. We have already received what we came for. The feeling that impermanence can be held gently. The feeling that change can be a transfer, not a disaster. The feeling that your mind does not have to stay awake to protect you. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, you can share it below when you are ready. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself, not to prove anything, only to place a small, kind mark in the world. Now imagine one final act. You take a worry that has been clinging to you today. Just one. You shape it into something small, like a pebble. You place it on the shelf beside the tablet. The shelf holds it. The clay holds it. Time holds it. You do not have to hold it in your chest. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you feel your body becoming heavier in the good way? As if sleep is finally allowed? Do you feel the day loosening its grip, as if it has accepted that night is stronger than urgency? We step away from the shelf. The lamp's circle of light is smaller now, and that is okay. The room does not need to be bright. Sleep prefers dimness. The story too is dimming, like a city's last lamp before rest. In the next part, we will let the sentences become shorter and softer. We will return to one last image: clay touching clay, breath touching breath, and we will drift together into a quiet ending where nothing new is demanded and your sleep can arrive like the river, steady and kind, back in the cool storehouse, and the night feels thicker, like velvet laid over the world. The lamp has burned down to a softer flame. Its light is still enough, but it no longer tries to brighten every corner. It simply pools in a small circle, warm and calm, and the shadows beyond it feel friendly. We stand there for a moment, you and I, listening to the quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty, the kind of quiet that feels held, as if the room has been waiting for your tired mind all along, as if the shelves of clay tablets are saying, without words, you may rest now. If you notice your body sinking more deeply into whatever supports you, let that happen. Let gravity be kind. Let your shoulders drop as if they have been gently forgiven. Let your forehead smooth. Let your tongue rest. Your breath can be simple, like water in a canal, steady, unforced, returning on its own. In this room, memory is not a burden. Memory is a shelf. Memory is a place where something can be placed down, safe and quiet until it is needed. And because the past has already learned how to hold so much, you do not have to hold everything tonight. Imagine now the very first moment a scribe begins to write. Not the moment of brilliance, the moment of preparation. A lump of clay is kneaded with both hands. Slow and patient like dough, it is pressed flat, smoothed with wet fingers, its surface made calm. The reed stylus is held lightly, not clenched, just held. Then with one gentle press, the first wedge appears. That is all it takes to begin. One small, quiet mark, one steady breath, one choice to move slowly. If your mind has been loud today, imagine you are giving it a stylus. Not to write more tasks, not to write more worries, only to write calm, only to mark the night with softness. Tonight, your calm does not have to be perfect. It only has to be practiced. And practice, as the Tablet House teaches, is made of repetition. The same gentle return again and again. You might notice your thoughts drifting. That is natural. When they drift, you can let them. And then you can bring your attention back, the way a scribe brings his stylus back to the line. No scolding, no frustration, just return. Return to the feeling of the air around your face. Return to the weight of your body. Return to the steady sound in your room. Return to the story's slow rhythm. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might just fade away when you remember that nothing needs to be solved at midnight, that the world can wait, that you can be human? We walk in imagination to the shelf where blank tablets rest under damp cloth. They are soft, waiting. They do not fear tomorrow, they simply wait for it. That softness is a quiet promise. There will be another day. And you do not have to build it tonight. In the corner of the storehouse, a small jar of water sits close to the lamp. Its surface is dark, reflecting a tiny circle of light. Water, again, the gentle corrector, the softener of sharp marks. If any thought has been too sharp, something you said, something you didn't say, something you wish you could redo, imagine dipping your fingers into this jar, feel the coolness. Then imagine smoothing that thought, not erasing your life, only softening the edge. The clay accepts it. The clay forgives. The clay becomes ready again. And then, in another corner, there is warmth, a small hearth, perhaps, or the memory of a kiln. Not blazing, not dramatic, just a gentle heat that makes the air feel safe. Fire, again. Not as fear, as steadiness, as the slow transformation that makes something durable. You can borrow that too, a gentle inner warmth, not intensity, not urgency, just enough to tell your body you are safe. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Now imagine we leave the storehouse together. We step out into the moonlit street. Is quieter than ever. The city feels like it is falling asleep around us, house by house. A door settles in its frame. A lamp goes out. A distant voice fades, the air is cool, and the scent of reeds drifts in from the river. We walk toward a rooftop. In Mesopotamian cities, rooftops were often flat, and on warm nights people slept there under open sky. Tonight is such a night. Not hot, not cold, just balanced. A night that feels like it was made for rest. We climb a small ladder or a set of narrow steps, slowly. And when we reach the roof, the plane opens again, the stars are scattered quietly. The moon is steady, the river is a dark ribbon moving without hurry. From up here, the world feels wide and your worries feel less detailed. Not because they are unimportant, but because distance makes them softer. A woven mat lies on the roof, a thin blanket, a clay jar of water nearby. Someone has placed a small lamp in a protected corner, but its flame is low. The light is just enough to keep the edges gentle. You lie down in your imagination, or you let your real body settle more deeply where it is. Either way, the effect is the same. The weight of you is allowed. The night takes it. The roof holds you. The bed holds you. The earth holds you. If you like, place one hand on your chest or imagine that warmth there. Feel the rise and fall. You have been breathing all day. You can keep breathing tonight. Nothing else is required. Now let us bring the lament back one last time. Not the words, only the lesson. The city changed, the city dimmed, and still the river flowed. Still the moon returned. Still someone wrote. Still memory found a shelf. That is the tender continuity. Even when a chapter ends, something continues. Even when you feel tired, your breath continues. Even when you feel uncertain, the night continues, and sleep is part of that continuation, not an escape, a return. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you find that your anxieties might soften when you imagine time as a wide sky that holds everything without panic? On this roof, the wind is gentle. It moves across your skin like a slow hand, smoothing a blanket. If a thought arises, it can float up into the sky like a small puff of dust. You do not need to chase it. The wind will carry it. Listen for the smallest sounds. A reed tapping another reed near the water. A far-off dog shifting in sleep. The faint murmur of a night watchman's sandals on packed earth. These sounds do not demand attention. They simply exist, spaced out, calm. Now the sentences can become simpler. Like the steps of the ziggurat, one, then another. Breathe in, breathe out. Let your shoulders sink, let your jaw loosen, let your eyes soften behind closed lids. If you notice the mind trying to plan, tell it gently. Not now. Not as a fight. As a kindness. Not now. Outside the storehouse, you can imagine a rooftop in flat and calm, built for summer nights. A woven mat lies on the bricks. A light blanket rests nearby, smelling faintly of sun and dust. Families once climbed up here when the day's heat faded, carrying small jars of water, a lamp, and nothing else. No hurry, no noise, only the simple comfort of being under open sky. Lie down there in your imagination, just for a moment. Let the bricks support you the way the earth supports the tell. Above you, the stars are scattered like quiet punctuation. And the moon is a smooth coin of light, steady and unbothered. A breeze moves across your forehead, cool and dry, and you can feel how easy it is to let your eyes close when the world is this gentle. And if it helps, let your own bed become that rooftop. Your pillow can be the cool brick softened by cloth. Your blanket can be the night air made warm. The sounds around you, whatever they are, can become the distant city. A faint murmur, a soft hum, a faraway movement that does not require you. Thinking about all the hands that once rested under this same moon, do you feel your breath slowing, as if it finally has permission? If a thought returns, greet it like a neighbor passing in the dark. A small nod, then let it continue on. Inhale gently, as if drawing the night in through a reed. Exhale longer, as if letting that breath flow downriver. Again, in, out. Each cycle is a quiet mark, pressed into the clay of the moment. Each cycle says without words, I am here, and I am safe enough to rest. Nothing else is needed, nothing else is asked. In the storehouse, the tablet rests. On the shelf, it is safe. It will still be there tomorrow. Your worries can be like that, safe on a shelf, not lost, just resting. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, you may share it below when you are ready, or you may keep it inside like a warm stone in your pocket. Either way is enough. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. We are close now to the last part of our journey. In the next part, we will let the lamp go lower. We will let the river's hush become a lullaby. We will place one final gentle colophon at the end of this night. For now, finished. For now, safe. For now, sleep. The lamp burns low now. In the storehouse, the circle of light has become smaller, softer, as if it knows you are ready. Beyond the doorway, the night is wide and calm. And somewhere in the distance, the river keeps its steady motion. Dark water moving past reeds, past palms, past silent stones. You do not need to follow it. You only need to feel its rhythm the way you feel your own breath, present, continuous, gentle. If your eyes are closed, let them remain closed. If they are half open, let them soften. If your mind is still holding on to something, let it hold lightly. The night has strong hands. It can carry what you can't carry right now. In this last part, nothing new is required, no new knowledge, no new names, no new effort. Only a slow return to stillness as natural as a city turning out its last lamp. Imagine, one last time, the shelf of tablets, rows of earth-colored rectangles resting in quiet order. They are not moving, they are not performing. They are simply there, holding memory without strain. And among them, the lament for rests like a sleeping seed. Its words safe, its voice quiet, its work finished for now. That is what you are allowed to be tonight. Finished for now, safe for now, held for now. If you have a worry still pressing at you, make it small, not by denying it, but by shaping it gently, like clay in your hands. A pebble-sized thought, a simple shape. Then place it on the shelf beside the tablet. The shelf receives it. The clay receives it. Time receives it. You do not have to keep it in your chest. You do not have to replay it in your mind. You can let it rest. Thinking about the cities that go up and down, do you feel how your own life is made of seasons too? Busy seasons and quiet ones, tense days and gentle nights. And this night, this one, is allowed to be a quiet season. Now imagine the rooftop again. A flat roof in Ur, warm from the day but cool enough for comfort. A woven mat, a thin blanket. The moon above, steady, calm, familiar. Stars scattered like soft punctuation. The wind moving like a careful hand, smoothing a sheet. You lie down there and the bricks hold you. Or you lie where you are now, and your bed holds you. Either way, the support beneath you is steady. It does not ask you to prove anything. It simply holds. Listen for the smallest sounds. A reed tapping another reed near the water. A far-off step of a watchman, slow and unhurried. A dog shifting in sleep. The faint hush of wind along walls. And your breath. In, out, in, out. If a thought comes, let it come like a moth near a lamp. It circles and then it drifts away. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to swat it. You can simply let it pass through the edge of your awareness and disappear into the dark. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. In the ancient tablet house, when a scribe finished copying a long text, he might mark the ending with a quiet note, a closing line, a colophon, a gentle signal that says, "This is complete." We can do the same, softly, for your day, not with pressure, not as a performance, only as a kindness. So in your mind, place a small closing note at the end of today. For now, finished. For now, enough. For now, I can stop. Let those words be simple. Let them be warm. Let them settle. The river keeps moving in the dark, but you do not have to move. The moon keeps shining, but you do not have to shine. The shelves keep holding their tablets, but you do not have to hold every thought. You can rest. If you want, take one last slow inhale, gentle, quiet. And let the exhale be long, as if you were smoothing the last sharp edge of the day. And now the sentences grow shorter, softer. The lamp grows lower. The storehouse grows quieter. The city grows still. The river hushes. The moon watches. You are safe. You are held. You are allowed to sleep. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below when you're ready. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. Good night, quietly. Good night, softly.
Our story pauses here. Every visual and word you've experienced was assisted by AI, yet guided and perfected by sincere human emotion. We hope this harmony of history and technology has crafted a beautiful dream for you tonight. Let go and drift deep into sleep. Good night.